Yeah, most definitely. And I think well, here's another thing too is the left, was it the left leg soreness last night? Because I was under the impression that was it the right quad that had the contusion, and then the Timberwolves listed as left leg soreness. So I don't know if you have any insight if that's a brand new injury or if that's just maybe they messed it up.
Well, that is a brand new injury based on what they have told us. I have not dug deep on any other details, but based on their announcement, yes, this is a new injury. I don't know the exact moment it happened last night. It's unfortunate that he couldn't fight through it, couldn't come
Yeah.
back, but it's a new injury. He felt like he couldn't go back in. He voiced that to Farnham and others with the Wolves. And it got back to Ryan, and Ryan knew not to put him back in the game when it was his turn to sub back in. So hopefully it's not a long-term injury. I don't sense there's a whole lot of Cal Ripken Jr. in D'Angelo Russell,
Yeah.
but I do think that this is an injury. Like they're not tanking as some people have suggested on social media. He's not faking
No.
this injury. Like something did legitimately happen. I just hope
Definitely.
that he can be back sooner rather than later.
For sure.
Well, yeah, especially it'd be very unfortunate if we got Cat back and then D'Lo was out for an extended period of time, because then, again, with them only playing 5 games together, like it just, for me, that's just so unfortunate that we bring in a second superstar and we don't even get to see him play with our superstar like at all.
Well, let me offer some resistance, Peyton.
All right.
You tell the audience why you think D'Angelo Russell is a superstar. Because I don't see a superstar there. I really don't. I think at times he's an elite shot creator and an elite shot
Mhm.
maker. But I'm just telling you, Peyton, I cannot attach the word superstar to D'Angelo Russell. In spite of the contract would say, sure, he is a superstar, but I don't see a superstar player myself.
All right. Well, did you see a superstar player in Brooklyn?
I did for the stretch of after they were 8-18, and then they made the playoffs as a 6 seed. Was that his last year there, or 2 years ago? And it might have been his last year.
2018,
One of the
I think.
seasons he was there, I think it was it 18, 19, 17, 18, whatever it was. They started 8-18, and then
Yeah.
they ended up at 40 wins. So from the game 26 mark on, those final 55 games of that regular season, yeah, he had some superstar in him. I also think that the supporting cast there, pretty darn underrated.
Oh yeah.
Like I know that, Jared Allen isn't a household name. Joe Harris is now like a $100 million player, but
Yep.
not a household name. I think those guys were also pretty darn good the rest of that season. That I think his complementary parts a lot better than a lot of people want to give credit to. But yeah, he for that stretch, yes. But is it also possible that that was an outlier?
True.
That the real D'Angelo Russell isn't the player that we saw for those 55 games? I think that is possible. I do. But that is the comeback. Like if people say that D'Angelo Russell isn't a winner, and I'm guilty of that. I've suggested that. Anybody can come back to me and say, well, what about that run with the Nets? He
Right.
carried them. He led them to the playoffs. Now, granted, they still finished with a losing record, but to come
Yeah.
back from the hole that they dug to get the 6 seed, and it helped that the Eastern Conference was incredibly weak that year. Like there are years when you win 40 games and you don't make the playoffs, right? In that
Yeah.
year, they win 40 and they're the 6 seed. Like that's pretty rare, but hey, you don't have to apologize if the competition isn't playing good basketball, right? I mean, they did what they had to do and they accomplished the 6 seed. But I just think if you look at the total body of work, if you talk to people with the Warriors, with the Lakers, now he's pretty immature with the Lakers, but you talk to some of those folks, like they're going to offer resistance to you. I'm just telling you on your suggestion that he's a superstar.
Yeah, I think I guess I would say I think he has the potential to be a superstar. And I think that if you look at his supporting cast here, I would argue that it's probably just as equal as the Brooklyn one, to be honest. If it were at full strength. If we're
I
at full
don't
strength.
think this roster, even full strength, Peyton, and it's my opinion,
Yeah.
right? You can have any opinion you want, but I respectfully disagree because I think this roster lacks toughness,
Mhm.
lacks cohesion, lacks some mental capacity. Like they're not running a super complicated offensive or defensive system, yet we see breakdown after breakdown,
Yeah.
right? So even as generic as some of the stuff they run, if the players can't grasp that, that's troubling. Now, on an individual level, yes, they have a lot of guys that were either McDonald's All-Americans, right? Jared Vanderbilt, Naz Reid. Like they have guys that were McDonald's All-Americans, were highly ranked coming out of high school. But to me, that doesn't mean that they're great NBA players, that they're great NBA team players,
Yeah.
able to play in a system, able to play competent defense. So I don't know about that. I think this roster still has a lot of warts.
Yeah, I would add onto that too, is that 2018 Brooklyn team. I think part of the reason they were so good is I think Dinwiddie's got to be one of the best two-way players in the league. I think he's an amazing playmaker. He's great defensively, and he can score. And it's the same with Jared Allen too. He is just such a presence in the paint, and we don't have that at the moment.
No.
And he can grab every single rebound that comes down to him. Joe Harris can shoot the lights out. That team, I just think, was a bit more complete and cohesive than the Wolves roster is at the moment. I'm not saying the Wolves don't have as much talent, because I think they do have as much just pure talent, but I just think the Brooklyn team played a little bit better as a team.
So
in general.
what could we do with our roster in order to make it like that for D'Lo, to maybe put him in the best situation to become the superstar that he was with the Nets? What are some changes we could make to our roster for that?
I'm not in favor of firing Ryan Saunders, but the easy comeback to that, Peyton, is the coach of that Brooklyn Nets team is available. Now he's on the bench of who? The LA Clippers, but Kenny Atkinson is not a head coach. Like you could hire Kenny Atkinson as the head coach, right? Like he knows how to maximize D'Angelo's potential, right? So that might be the easy comeback. They still need a rim protector. They still need a competent power forward. They still need shooting. Like there's a lot of things they need. I mean, they certainly need a dog, right? However you want to define dog, right? That it factor, however you want to define it. Like a PJ Tucker, right?
Yeah.
Like PJ influences winning, but if you look at the box score, there's nothing there. Like you don't want PJ Tucker on your fantasy team, right? but he impacts winning.
Yeah.
He just does, and there's a history of that, right? Like you need a guy like that. One could argue that James Johnson could be helping this roster, even if not a ton on the court. You know, just a lot behind the scenes. Even though behind the scenes, they're limited in many ways. With COVID, this isn't the old behind the scenes. Like, there's only a certain amount of time they can be in the locker room, that they can be at the practice facility. They have to arrive, a certain time before games. Like they can't get there at 3:00 unless they're undergoing treatment. But like, if you want to just get there at 3:00 to get out on the floor to get some early shots and hang out with guys, that can't happen, during these COVID times. But guess what? Every team is dealing with that. This isn't unique here to Minnesota. And that's why, like, when I talk about youth, and there's something to be said about them being the youngest team in the NBA. I get that. But like last time I checked, look at Memphis last year. Memphis had enough success. They were the 8th seed heading into the bubble. Portland ended up getting that 8th seed. But Memphis was right there until the end last season, competing for a playoff spot. Memphis is in the mix right now, right?
Yes.
And has Jaren Jackson Jr. played at all this year?
Not a minute.
So they've been down one of their best players. Morant missed 3-ish weeks with that ankle injury.
Nope.
He still isn't even playing great ball. Like, I know there's a lot more there with Ja Morant. I can't imagine he's 100% just looking at some of the lines that he's produced, and they haven't been bad, but I just think Ja Morant is so darn good.
Yeah.
But like Ja Morant, rookie point guard, comes in last year and just elevated them. Like, so it's possible. It's very possible. So there are still issues here. Like, you can win with young guys, right? So that points to, there's a lot of people at fault, right? Like, I know Ryan is on the chopping block of a lot of fans, that he's number one, but David Vanterpool is in charge of the defense. Now, the defense was better before these last 2 games for about a 2-3 week stretch. It was upper half of the league in terms of defensive rating. But then the last 2 games, Saturday and Monday, blah defense, right? Vanterpool's in charge of the defense. Gerson is the one who put this roster together. Internally, it wasn't just Glenn Taylor that thought, hey, like, I expect the playoffs. Jake Layman went on record saying, you know, we should be a playoff team. There were others behind the scenes that said this should be a playoff team. And again, Cat's been out. I get that, but they shouldn't be losing how they're losing. And they shouldn't be quite this bad. Like, they should at least have a couple more wins.
Yeah,
right?
I agree.
Like,
definitely.
they shouldn't be at 6. They should be at 8 or 9 wins at least right now, even minus Cat. Like, Cat shouldn't be that important. If that guy is that important, then the rest of the roster is broken in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I